Part 23. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 223. Chi Heiran hid in the jungle with his people and observed the situation of the checkpoint with clairvoyance. Now, they are staying behind the checkpoint. Base Han County has been controlled by them. There is an army of gold soldiers stationed in King He Town. These people didn't dare to act rashly, for fear of alarming the garrison of Hanshong Mansion, so they planned to get rid of the people at the checkpoint first, and then knock out the garrison in King He Town together after Zhang Ziyi brought people over. Chi Heiran put the clairvoyance into the wooden tube that he carried with him, and said in a low voice, "All of them hide their bodies. They use their hands during dinner and don't make too much noise. Mu Shi, take people to guard the intersections, and they are absolutely not allowed to escape." One person. Mu Shi responded and led a group of people away. Chi Heiran just lay down in the jungle with his eyes closed and rested. When the time came, he opened his eyes, and Fei Bai lay beside him in a short suit, and said in a low voice, "Master, it's time." They all shifted to eat. "Do it." The people behind Chi Heiran dispersed and sneaked towards the checkpoint room, while Chi Heiran led Fei Bai and a few others to the checkpoint. 18 soldiers were guarding there, and the sky was already dark at this time. Chi Heiran advanced through the trees to hide his figure, slipped the dagger from his hand, and while no one was paying attention, covered one person's mouth and wiped his nose. 3/4 of an hour later, when everyone gathered here, Chi Heiran asked, "How? All 64 people are here." Mu Shi also nodded and said, "No one escaped. Report to our people, their people can come here, move the checkpoint, you take turns to rest now, we will go to King He Town in a while, and we will capture King He Town before dawn." Everyone agrees. Mu Yangling was sitting on the hillside overlooking the cornfield below. The corn is growing gratifyingly now. There was a heavy rain just 2 days ago, which not only relieved the drought in the field, but also made everyone's drinking water looser. Now the corn in the cornfield has corn kernels. Because of Chi Heiran's instructions before leaving, Mu Yangling pays more attention to the safety of the cornfield. Look down on the mountainside. But with her eyesight, the places she can see are still limited. Mu Yangling thought, it would be great if she had pair of looking glasses, maybe she could make a pair by herself. Chi Heiran treasures the clairvoyance in his hand very much. I don't know what expression he will try after she also makes a pair. While Mu Yangling was thinking wildly, a distant horn sounded suddenly from the direction of Xingzhou Mansion. Mu Yangling jumped up and tiptoed to look in the direction of Xingcheng Pass. The people working in the fields below also heard the sound of the horn, and they all stopped their movements and looked in the direction of Xingzhou Mansion. Over the years, they were no strangers to the sound of horns. This year, Jin soldiers often attacked the city, and they often heard the sound of horns for retreat or defense. This was the first time they heard such a long but passionate horn sound. Mu Yangling had already rushed down the mountain. The people down the mountain might not have understood it, but she did. It was the horn of attack. Qi Ziyuan wants to go to war with the kingdom of Jin? Chi Heiran went to Hanshong Mansion 2 days ago because of this matter? She thought he was going to assassinate him. Mu Yangling ran down the mountain, but had no place to inquire about the news. He was so anxious that he was worried about his father and Chi Heiran. Since it is such a big military operation, then my father must participate. Is he in front of the enemy or behind the enemy? I should have prepared more wound medicine for him when he left last time, even if he didn't need it, just in case. Xu Wanyang also came out of the room. Seeing her daughter's anxious face, she asked, "Aling, what's wrong with you? What did the sound of the horn mean just now? Are the golden soldiers attacking the city again?" Many villagers wandered outside the courtyard of Mu's house, and their ears were pricked up when they heard the words. They knew that Mu Yangling and the little general were close, so they might know something inside. Mu Yangling shook his head and said with a sullen face, "Our people are going to attack Jinbing City." Xu Huanyang opened her mouth wide and widened her eyes and said, "General Qi is going to recover his homeland." She became a little excited, and then worried, "Will your father also go to the battlefield?" "Mother, father is a soldier, so there is no soldier who does not go to the battlefield." Xu Huanyang gritted her teeth, then, "Shall we prepare something for your father?" "It's useless to prepare anything. The war has already started. Before the war is over, it is impossible for us to send things in." Mu Yangling just wanted to know about Qi Ziyuan's strategic goals. He only intended to alarm the Jin soldiers and let them concentrate, or capture the city. To what extent? Mu Yangling thought a lot, but was discouraged after a while. She used to be a soldier and knew that all her questions were confidential. It was impossible for Qi Ziyuan to tell her, even Qi Heiran. The people outside the courtyard were also a little sad. They all had family members in the barracks, so someone hesitated and said, "Should the 5th Battalion not be on the battlefield? Didn't it mean that our 5th Battalion was left over by others? Isn't it too bad?" Ziyu Hung stared. "Who says wooing is bad? My cousin is a warrior." The people outside curled their lips and said, "There's nothing wrong with now, as long as you don't have to go to the battlefield." Mu Yangling didn't speak, just sat on the steps with his chin propped up, and said, "Whether it's good or bad, there must be some chaos recently. We have to protect our crops." Mu Yangling looked up at Old Man Sun, and said, "Son Grandpa, you have to come forward to this matter. Please come forward and ask all the banners to discuss it, and all banners will arrange strong men to patrol to ensure the safety of this cropland." Old Man Sun also became serious, but his heart was agitated. This is a good time to stand up. After thinking about it for a while, he agreed, and said carefully, "But it's better to get the little general or the little general's instruction, so that everyone will be more obedient." Mu Yangling lowered his eyes and thought for a while, "I'll help you get this." Old Man Sun heaved a sigh of relief, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Aling, I will lead people to guard this piece of crops, and no one will try to take a single corn from me." Some people also suggested that the 5th Battalion should send more soldiers to patrol, so that they would not have to recruit strong men. After all, the 5th Battalion would not go to the battlefield now. But this proposal was rejected as soon as it was put forward, because the 5th Battalion was also going to the battlefield, and they were incorporated into the logistics to escort the soldiers on the front line. Mu Yangling deliberately took the time to check the traces on the road after their luggage passed by, so as to infer the scale of the battle. After mental calculation, Mu Yangling was both happy and worried. He was happy that Qi Ziyuan dared to launch such a big battle and must have a certain amount of confidence. What was worrying was that he didn't know how long this battle would last. "After leaving for the first time, I haven't returned home, and I don't know when I will come back next time." Mu Yangling looked at the traces on the ground, and finally caught up with the front team. Before they came forward to guard people, he grabbed one person, pointed to the traces on the ground and said, "Tell the two people to deal with the traces in the back." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 224. People from the 5th Battalion escorted the food and grass, and most of them knew Mu Yangling. The person who wanted to stop Mu Yangling saw her clearly, and said with a smile, "So it's Miss Mu." He glanced at the traces on the ground, suddenly realized, he said, "Miss Mu, don't worry, we will ask someone to deal with the traces, thank you for reminding me." Mu Yangling just nodded slightly and turned back. She drew a rough map on the ground with branches, highlighting Jingzhou Mansion, Hanshong Mansion, and Keizhu. The Hanshong Mansion was attacked. If she was from the Kingdom of Jin, she would first ask Jingzhou Mansion for help, and at the same time send a message to the Keizhu defenders to get them ready for defense and support. Jingzhou Mansion is an important city, and it is also the political center where Jin soldiers ruled the Great Zhou dynasty. The people of Jin state are called Zijing, and they must not dare to send too many reinforcements in case someone raids Jingzhou Mansion. The number of Jin soldiers stationed in Kazhu is not less than that of Jingzhou Mansion, because the UN family army is outside Kazhu. Mu Yangling heard from Qi Heiran that the UN family's army totaled more than 120,000. This is the data that Qi Ziyuan knew. This time the military system is reorganized, the UN's army will only increase, so the number of golden soldiers stationed in Kazhu is also quite large. From Kazhu to Hanzhong Mansion, it will take 7 days to march in a hurry. Unless Qi Ziyuan can completely occupy Hanzhong Mansion within 7 days, he may face attack from 3 sides. Mu Yangling squatted on the ground with his chin in his hands and thought. Qi Ziyuan is a veteran leader of the army, so he must know this, so I don't know what cards he has. Mu Yangling soon knew what cards he had. Qi Ziyuan's dispatch of troops to the Hanzhong Mansion blinded a group of people. There were those who opposed it, and there were also those who expressed their joy. Discussions about this matter can be heard everywhere in Xingzhou Mansion. The storyteller in the tea house has changed his previous script and talked about the story of Qi Ziyuan and the anecdote of the generals regaining their homeland. As the magistrate of Xingzhou Prefecture, Wu Shanke sent troops to Qi Ziyuan to find out about this. It is possible that the local area could still contain the army, because the army's food and grass came from the local area, but now the army's food and grass are all self-sufficient, and Qi Ziyuan is not restrained at all. Wu Shanke went to the barracks to protest, but he didn't even see Qi Ziyuan's face. The people of Xingzhou Mansion were all frightened and looked at the Xingcheng Pass with anticipation. They only heard the shouts of killing and the sound of horns outside the pass on the first day afterwards. The soldiers led by Qi Ziyuan seemed to rush to the boundary of Hanzhong Mansion, and ordinary people never heard from them again. They were just worried about the future of the soldiers in Xieying and the Xingzhou Mansion when news came from Kazhu that the UN family army had also sent troops to Kazhu. The people of Xingzhou Mansion suddenly erupted and shouted, "Homeland, come back!" Once everyone changed Qi Ziyuan's worries, they all said confidently, "With General Yuan sending troops, maybe this time we can really take back the Hanzhong Mansion." Yuan's army has 130,000 soldiers, and the discipline is strict. General Yuan is planning a strategy. As long as the emperor doesn't stop him, he will definitely be able to take back the Hanzhong Mansion. Such remarks filled the streets and alleys of Xingzhou Mansion, and only then did Mu Yangling know the reason why Qi Ziyuan boldly attacked Hanzhong Mansion. Mu Yangling breathed a sigh of relief. General Yuan sent troops, and the pressure on Xieying would be much less. Fan Zijin was a little displeased. It was clearly the elder cousin's decision to send troops to take back the Hanzhong Mansion, and the soldiers were also dispatched by the elder cousin. How did General Yuan get all the credit in the end? But he couldn't say this to Rongxian, so he could only complain to Mu Yangling when he returned to the 5th Battalion to escort the grain and grass. Mu Yangling said, "You think General Yuan took the credit for General Qi, but how do you know that General Yuan is willing to take the credit? This is a blessing and a curse, but for General Yuan, such rumors do more harm than good." The Master of High Merit, Fan Zijin asked back. Mu Yangling said, "Although I don't know much, it's just that the Holy Majesty has suspicions about General Yuan, otherwise he wouldn't have won 8 gold medals in a row to recall General Yuan, thus losing Jingzhou Mansion and other 3 houses. Rumors like this will do more harm than good to General Yuan. He may not know that he will arouse the Emperor's suspicion even more after he sends troops, but he still sends troops to help General Qi contain Kazhu's troops. To be honest, I admire him very much." Fan Zijin smiled wryly, "It's because I treat a gentleman's belly with the heart of a villain." Mu Yangling nodded, patted him on the shoulder and said, "That's why General Qi asked you to learn more with Brother Rongxian. You can ask Brother Rongxian about these questions, and he will teach you." Fan Zijin raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "You're so affectionate, When did you become so familiar with brother Rongxian? Mu Yangling rolled his eyes and said, when did I become familiar with brother Rongxian? He told me to call him that. Although I have only met a few times, I think I still have a good eye for people. Mu Yangling said, don't worry about this matter, don't clarify, don't add fuel to the flames, the general should have a way to deal with it. Mu Yangling looked at him and said, you must not have the emperor's consent to send troops this time, right? The servant, what attitude? If you still write a letter to ask the emperor's approval, the kingdom of Jin will have already lined up its troops, Fan Zijin said, curling his lips. As for the servants, they are being served in the general's mansion with delicious food and drink. It's very comfortable. Mu Yangling knew that they had put him under house arrest, so he thought for a while and said in a low voice, actually, it's better to let him go at this time than to put him under house arrest. Fan Zijin blinked, looked at Mu Yangling for a while, blessed to his heart, he looked at Mu Yangling complicatedly and said, I didn't expect you to be able to figure out such a thing with your head. I will remember this favor. When I turn around, my cousin will come back, I will tell him, come over together and thank you. Mu Yangling waved his hand and said, we are grasshoppers on a rope. My family can only be good if you are good. I don't want you to take down Hanshong Mansion with all your might and then have to celebrate in prison. Fan Zijin snorted, you underestimate us too, big cousin already has a way to deal with it. That must be a pain. Mu Yangling looked in the direction of Xing Cheng Pass and asked, although I know I shouldn't ask, I still want to know where the generals are now. Fan Zijin was silent for a moment, and said, your father is not with big cousin, he is behind with Heiran, but as long as Heiran is fine, your father should be fine. Mu Yangling patted him on the shoulder and said, thank you. Fan Zijin stood up and said, I came back to escort the grain and grass, and now I should go. By the way, most of the people in the 5th Battalion have been transferred, and now there are very few people left. You need to take care of this large cornfield here some, watch closely, don't let anyone steal them. Speaking of this, I remembered it, Mu Yangling jumped up and said, Grandpa Sun asked me to ask you for an authorization document, so that he can organize the strong men to patrol day and night. This was very simple for Fan Zijin, so he immediately asked Yanmo to get Wenmo to write a sheet, and then stamped his seal on it and gave it to her. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 225. When Rongxian heard Fan Zijin say that he wanted to let the servant be free, he glanced at him slightly in surprise, and said in silence for a moment, it's good to let him take the initiative to explain this matter to the Holy One, otherwise, when the matter reaches the Holy One, there will be no one on the side of the servant if there is any movement. I am afraid that General Huyan of the Imperial Court will accuse the angel of private detention, which is our negligence. Fan Zijin nodded, but we can't just let people go like this. Brother Rong, I don't know what hobbies this angel has. Angels are the eyes and ears of the Holy One. Even if he doesn't favor us in the memorial, he just says a word impartially. Better than all our excuses. Rongxian glanced at him approvingly, nodded and said, don't worry, I will do this myself, and the general will not be put in danger. Rongxian had already inquired about his personality and hobbies after the servant arrived in Xingzhou Mansion, so he naturally knew what to say and what to do to win his favor. So when the emperor received the news that Qi Ziyuan had sent troops to Hanshong Mansion, he also received a letter from the servant. Even though the servant mentioned in the letter that Qi Ziyuan was loyal and patriotic but was too strong, the emperor was still very angry. Now that the national treasury is empty, he is still having a headache about the annual coins he will give to Jingguo and Zixia next year. He was about to beg for mercy and tolerance from Jingguo Zixia, but Qi Ziyuan directly sent troops to fight there. Isn't this causing trouble for him? However, Yuan Jiajin was also dispatched. If it was only Qi Ziyuan alone, the emperor could cut him, but now Yuan Jiajin is also involved. At the beginning, because he recalled Yuan Jiajin, the censor and the people had a lot of opinions on him. If he warns again this time, the people there must be something to say. The emperor didn't want to add money to tea houses and restaurants at all. The emperor regretted that he used General Yuan back then. At the beginning, seeing that he came from a poor background and had nothing to rely on in the army and court, he thought he would listen to his own words. The Holy Will is also obedient and contrary, and he has not listened to his orders several times when he sent troops, but he still has a reputation among the people, so if he can't hold his handle, he can't be easily moved. But he has the help of the Shen family, his hands and feet are clean, and he loves the people like a son, so the emperor can't find anything against him. Now the most powerful person in the great Zhou dynasty besides Prime Minister Qin is General Yuan, but Prime Minister Qin's power comes from him, it all depends on his words, but General Yuan is not. The emperor beat the dragon chair with an ugly face and thought to himself, originally he wanted to support Qin. Prime Minister came to check and balance General Yuan, but now it seems that it has little effect. After all, Prime Minister Qin has no military power, so it is difficult for General Yuan to have scruples. In order to relieve the crisis of the national treasury before, he made the army self-sufficient. In the past 6 months, the emperor has faintly regretted it, because he found that his control over the army, which was originally small, was even weaker. The emperor sighed, it would be great if there is someone who can check and balance Yuan's army. Hearing the words, the head eunuch next to him turned his eyes and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, isn't there a ready-made person here? The emperor looked up at him and asked, Who? Qi Ziyuan, General Qi, the chief eunuch said in a low voice when he saw the emperor frowning, Your Majesty, this General Qi is a young talent. If you help him up and make him a general of the army, then you can check and balance the Yuan family's army yet. The emperor frowned, I'm afraid that another Qi family army will be brought in, and they will still be disobedient. The chief eunuch smiled and said, Your Majesty is worrying too much. General Yuan is the leader of the army, and General Qi is also the leader of the army. There is no room for 2 tigers in this mountain. Isn't it you, the Holy One, who benefit from the fight between the snipe and the clam? But I heard that Qi Ziyuan admires General Yuan very much. The head eunuch smiled indifferently and said, That's because General Qi is only a 3rd-rank Xianfeng doctor, and he is a 4th-rank general, with only 30,000 to 40,000 people under his command, unlike General Yuan, who is a 1st-rank general. There are 140,000 to 50,000 troops under his command. If they stand at the same height, General Qi is much younger than General Yuan. The emperor couldn't help but smile when he heard the words, clapped his hands and said, Good strategy, but Qi Ziyuan has not reached the weak crown this year, and he has risen to the 3rd rank quickly enough, there is no reason to reward him at this moment. Why did the emperor forget that General Qi is now attacking Hanshong Mansion? If he recovers Hanshong Mansion, it will be a great achievement. Then what if it fails? The emperor asked with a slight smile. That means Qi Xiu is far from worthy of cultivation. Is he alive or dead, or is it just a matter of a word from the sage? The emperor said in distress, I'm afraid that if the Hanshong Mansion is taken over, the Jin kingdom will have an opinion, and if Qi Ziyuan is rewarded again, I'm afraid it will turn against the Jin kingdom. The chief eunuch looked at the emperor speechlessly. Dezhou and Jingguo have always been at odds, okay. Even if he is an eunuch, he also knows that the reason why the Jin soldiers did not go south is because the country is not peaceful, and the national power is not enough to support their southward attack, and Dezhou is willing to pay a lot of old coins, so as to maintain the superficial peace. But that's it? There are also many conflicts on the border every year. Take this year as an example. There are hundreds of times reported from all over the country that Jin soldiers went south to fight grass valleys. How did the emperor see that the two countries' diplomacy is very good? Do you think they are a nation of brothers like the letter of credence said? But the head eunuch only dared to complain in his heart, he didn't dare to speak out, he only comforted the emperor and said, "Your Majesty, it is the wish of the people all over the world to take back the Hanzhong mansion, and I believe the emperor of Jin will understand." The emperor cast a look of "You think I'm a fool?" and the chief eunuch said, "Now General Qi has sent troops to Hanzhong mansion, and Yuan Jiajin has also left Kaizhu. Winning is better than losing." The emperor thought about it too, he was offended anyway, so winning is better than losing. Order Qi Ziyuan not to move forward after taking over the Hanzhong mansion, so as not to provoke a large-scale counterattack by the kingdom of Jin, and then send a message to General Yuan to quickly withdraw from Kaizhu. Kaizhu has hundreds of thousands of Jin soldiers. Ah, how much food and grass will be spent for the soldiers and horses to move. Now that the national treasury is empty, and disasters are gradually appearing in various places, I don't have any food to support them now, nor will I next year. The chief eunuch hurried down and asked the servant to come in and write the imperial edict. Qi Ziyuan received the imperial decree in Hanzhong mansion. At this time, he had already occupied more than half of the counties and towns in Hanzhong mansion. He put away the imperial decree and responded with a slightly raised mouth. He only had more than 40,000 people, and he had no intention of continuing to go north. As long as the Hanzhong mansion can be regained, the food must be eaten bite by bite, and the homeland must be taken back step by step. Zhang Ziyi led the troops to join the army, dismounted and reported, "General, all counties and towns on Hanzhong Funan Road have been recovered, all Jin soldiers have been eradicated, and a small group has fled north." Qi Ziyuan nodded, "There's no need to chase after them. You stay behind and guard the gates of the counties. When Rongxian comes over, immediately start arranging recruitment. Our troops should expand a bit. All the land occupied by the rich and powerful of the kingdom of Jin will be taken back as military fields. The reborn wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 226. In the end, of course, Qi Ziyuan couldn't turn all the land enclosed by the rich and powerful of the Jin kingdom into military land, so he grabbed about a quarter of the land, and the remaining half was returned to the people, and the other half was nationalized. The good news is that he recruited nearly 20,000 soldiers, and the court actually approved of his actions. The bad news is that he has to pay for all the armaments of these people. Even if Qi Ziyuan emptied his family, he still couldn't gather the armaments of 20,000 people, and after the 20,000 people, their families still had to be supported by him. These people were willing to bring their families to become military households because they couldn't survive. After going down, there was not even a grain of rice. I heard that with Qi Ziyuan, not only would there be fields and land, but also food. As soon as Qi Ziyuan recruited troops, he brought his family to join him. Qi Ziyuan was so worried that he didn't even drink the celebration wine to his heart's content, so Fan Zijin pulled Qi Heiran to him and said, "Big cousin, the fastest way to get money in this world is to rob peace and business. Robbing is an act of breaking the law and discipline. If we don't do it naturally, then only business is left." Qi Ziyuan frowned and looked at the two, and asked, "What are you trying to mess around with?" Fan Zijin pinched Qi Heiran secretly, and Qi Heiran said without changing his expression, "Brother, the diced rabbit meat produced by Zijin's workshop is delicious, and many people like it after getting it in the south." Chen Guanxi said that the output is 3 times higher. The times are outnumbered, and now he's looking for more outlets in the south. Qi Ziyuan leaned back on the chair, crossed his hands delicately, and slightly raised his head to look at them. "So, brother, those barbarians are grazing in enclosures. Look outside, there are pastures everywhere. If they raise rabbits and we recycle them, and they make money, then our pressure will be much less." Chi Ziyuan said, "No, we are Han people, and the Han people mainly cultivate. The people of Hanzhong Prefecture are disgusted with the enclosure and grazing. If we not only do not abolish this practice, but support it, then their hatred of the Hu people will be transferred to us. Come on. We don't move the common people's land, we let the military households do it." Chi Heiran muttered, "I'm not doing it for their benefit, and I'm not occupying their land for nothing." Chi Ziyuan glanced at him and said, "That's not okay, military households are also civilians." Fan Zijin said with a grin, "Cousin, it's not that they use all the land to raise rabbits. They think I can't collect so much. There are so many military households, as long as some people are willing to use a few acres of inferior land to raise rabbits, a few hundred is enough, and I don't want more for the time being. This year, it will be mandatory. Next year, it's up to them to keep them voluntarily. Cousin, each of their households has more than 100 mu of land and they only have to force a few mu. There won't be much resentment. Look at Wuying, all the top-notch lands are now forced to be planted with corn." Chi Ziyuan looked at Fan Zijin with deep eyes, and said, "How much income can I get? Can it support my soldiers?" Fan Zijin met his eyes and nodded stupidly, "It's almost there, I'll think of other ways then." Satisfied, Chi Ziyuan said with a smile, "Okay, you can make up your own mind on this matter." Saying that, he got up happily and left. Fan Zijin couldn't help feeling annoyed. We were tricked by our cousin. Chi Heiran was puzzled, "What's the matter?" Fan Zijin couldn't help but patted him on the head, "Didn't you hear what my cousin asked just now? All the money we earned so hard must be given to my cousin to raise soldiers." Chi Heiran escaped from under his hands, and said unconvinced, "The money earned was originally used to raise soldiers, otherwise, what else could it be used for?" Fan Zijin opened his mouth, and continued to think about it. Even if his cousin didn't say anything now, and he couldn't eat and drink in Xieying later, when his cousin was worried, Heiran still had to save food from his own mouth, then take it from him, and then give it to his cousin brother. Anyway, all the money will still have to be spent on raising soldiers in the end. Fan Zijin could only wave his hand in the end. "Forget it, Mu Yangling is cheap." Seeing Heiran's eyes showing doubts, he said, "The contract we signed was the income of the entire workshop, and they have to get it from Mu Yangling for raising rabbits, so this contract remains unchanged. In the end, he worked so hard to create a workshop, except that Mu Yangling made money, and he and Heiran couldn't get a penny." Fan Zijin gritted his teeth, brainstormed, and said, "I can't buy grain and bring it back every time I sell the diced rabbit meat. It would take too long, and the journey with these grains would be too risky." Fan Zijin rolled his eyes. Said, "You said that if I let out the news that there is a severe drought in the north, so there is a sharp shortage of food, will those merchants bring a large amount of food? At that time, our caravan will be able to buy some other goods to sell, at least more than the business of diced rabbit meat is over." Chi Heiran only lowered his head and thought for a moment before refusing, "No, once the rumor spreads, the people will suffer first. Once the food price rises, they can't afford to eat anymore. We took down the Hanzhong mansion to protect the people inside. I don't want riots happening anytime soon." Fan Zijin rolled his eyes and said, "Who said I'm going to spread the news in Hanzhong mansion? I want Chen Guanxi to spread the news in Jiangnan. The information between the two places is not clear, and the news is lagging behind. Both sides can only half believe. Once the rumors are refuted, nothing will happen." Fan Zijin snorted and said, "When the time comes, there will be more food in the two prefectures, and the people will be able to settle down, and your pressure will be less." "Is this trying to trick those businessmen?" Chi Heiran asked with his head tilted. "It's not a scam, it's just asking them to earn less," Fan Zijin said. "The two governments are indeed short of food, and now the price of food is slowly rising. They still make money from sending food, but it's not as much as they imagined. It's just huge profits, and shopping malls are like battlefields, so I don't think it's a trap. Chi Heiran did not express any further objection, but asked curiously, you just said that you would buy goods from the south, didn't all our money be used to raise soldiers and prepare armaments? How can there be any money? Isn't there still Mu Yangling? Fan Zijin snorted and said, it's cheap for her. I'll tell her later and ask her to hand over the money to me. I'm sure I can earn us more money. Chi Heiran wanted to object, so he hurriedly said, I'm not taking advantage of her, although I used her money, I did this business, and your people escorted the things all the way up, so the share we deserve it. Fan Zijin calculated in his mind how much he and Chi Heiran would get, but in fact he had never done business, so he didn't know how to calculate it now. If it was Mu Yangling, she probably could guess how much she could get. After all, she was just an investor and didn't worry about other things, so the share she could get would not be too high. Because Fan Zijin came up with the idea, and Fan Zijin was in charge of the business, and the journey from Jiangnan to Xingzhou Mansion was a long way away, so even if he just asked the escort to escort him, he would have to pay a lot of money. What Fan Zijin wanted to buy were some silks, satins, and pine cloths. Because there had been wars at the border, there were very few merchants who were willing to come here to do business. Xingzhou Mansion was small before, and Fan Zijin didn't care about it, but now they have occupied Hanzhong Mansion, which is a big place. There are many rich and noble families in Hanzhong Mansion, most of whom were too late to flee south and unwilling to leave their homeland. Accounting, these things in the city become less and less, and doing these businesses at this time will only make money but not lose. Of course, the people in Hanzhong Fukan are still being investigated, and people still don't go out of the city casually. Even if someone thinks of starting this business at this time, the only ones who can put it into action are Fan Zijin and the others. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 227. The weather began to turn cold, and the corn stalks in the field were half dry. Mu Yangling got into the cornfield and broke off one. Peeling off the braid, the corn kernels inside were golden and full. When he pinched it with his fingers, it was hard, and 10 days ago, the pulp that filled my fingers when I pinched it was different. After the skin was broken this time, only the nails were moist. Mu Yangling handed the corn to Ziyuheng, and said, I can take it, go back and tell my aunt, and the field will start tomorrow. Ziyuheng responded happily, rubbed her arms and said, the weather is getting cold soon, if you don't harvest this, the corn will not stay in the field. So we are very lucky, Mu Yangling said, it turns out that the second season has actually been planted. The two sisters took some corn cobs home and were about to tell their aunt the good news when they saw a lot of people standing in front of their house. Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng looked at each other and ran back. Before Mu Yangling could reach him, he heard a deep voice saying, my fellow villagers, I have been transferred to the front line, and I am not here with the other soldiers of the 5th Battalion. One place, so I don't know their situation, but now that the war is over, everyone should be able to receive the news in 2 days, folks, go back and wait for a few more days. The villagers who came to inquire about the news left in disappointment, revealing Mu Yangling behind him. Mu Yangling saw Mu Shi standing at the door with an unshaven beard, his eyes lit up, he yelled, he climbed up and hugged his father's arm, and shouted, Father, you are back. Mu Shi also had a smile on his face, and stroked her hair with a smile on his face, Father is back. Xu Wanyang was pulling the twins and leaning against the door to see their father and daughter. When she saw Mu Shi approaching, she gave him a tender look, squatted in front of the twins, pointed at Mu Shi and said, this is Daddy, quickly call him Daddy. The twins were almost 1 year old. Standing on the ground, they tried their best to look up at Mu Shi, yelled twice, then timidly hid behind their mother and peeked at the big man. Feeling ashamed in his heart, Mu Shi squatted down and looked at the two children, took out some gadgets from his arms, shook them and said, "Father gave it to you, do you want it?" Bosi and Kijia looked at the things, then looked at the big man in front of them, and finally looked at their sister, and found that her sister was looking at them with a smile, and immediately became more confident, and immediately grabbed the things in Mushi's hand and hugged them. Seeing this, Mushi laughed, and said cheerfully, "As expected of being a descendant of my Mu family, that's how it should be." Shu Wanyang glared at him, and said angrily, "Your children are like overlords, even Bowen has learned to fight in school, and you still praise them, be careful that they will become more lawless in the future." Mushi picked up the twins from left to right, then went into the house and said, "They just need to listen to me and you." The aunt asked, "How long can you stay at home this time?" Mushi put the twins on the Kong, and smiled to his aunt, "The war is over, this time the general decided to give me half a month's vacation. There should be nothing important before the Chinese New Year, so I can go home every 10 days. 2 days after a pause, he continued, "I have been promoted to 100 households, and the military salary has increased." Mushi brought a lot of things back this time, and he said to Mu Yangling, "Go and get Bowen back, don't go to school this afternoon." Mu Yangling responded cheerfully, went into the house, took the money bag and ran out. Ziyuheng pulled Ziulan to follow. "Cousin, we will go with you." "Then go quickly." Mu Yangling ran towards the city while talking, first went to the academy to pick up the blog post, and then went to buy meat and some ingredients. Bowen looked at the meat and drooled, "Sister, I also want to eat braised pork." Bowen's meal was different from theirs. Seeing that Mu Yangling bought 2 caddies of pork belly, he knew that he would make braised pork in the evening. "Stand up." Ziyuheng interceded for him, cousin is back, let cousin eat the same food as us tonight." Mu Yangling nodded after thinking about it, "That's fine, but only for tonight." Bowen nodded again, and added, "Mr. Dada said that my body is much better, and my energy and blood are stronger than before. When I played with them yesterday, they couldn't catch me." "Good job," Mu Yangling praised him, "keep working hard, if no one in your academy can catch up with you, your health will be considered good, and you won't have to be taboo in the future, you can eat whatever you want like us." Bowen looked forward to this bright future, and followed his sister to go shopping with a smile. Although he was very greedy, Bowen still only picked up 3 chopsticks for each dish when eating at night, and he didn't want to eat too much. Mu Yangling nodded secretly when he saw it. What to do and what not to do, he has always been aware of it, and he has always been able to restrain himself. Most of the food went into Mushi's stomach. Not only Shu Wanyang was distressed, Mu Yangling also picked up 2 chopsticks of food for the old man. "Father, you are too skinny, you are going to fight on the battlefield, and the little general is not ready. Feed you guys." Mushi explained, "Little general eats and lives the same as us. Your father and I are not bad. We are already strong. It's okay to be thinner. You haven't seen the little general. He is almost out of shape." Mushi said with some distress, "The little general is only 3 years older than Aling, and he is still a child. So following Chi Hao and rushing into the battle is not a big test for Mushi. He always unconsciously regards Chi Heiran as his nephew, but sometimes he has to admire Chi Heiran's ruthlessness." After eating, the family nestled on the Kong, and Mushi took out the 2 big bundles he had brought back. He took out the folded cloth and opened it, and the family was blinded immediately. Chi Heiran stuffed a pair of gold bracelets into his aunt's hand and said, "This is for Ziyuheng, make it her dowry." He picked out 4 jade pendants from a pile of jade ornaments and gave them to Ziyuheng and Ziulan. "This you also keep it, 2 yuan per person, and it will be used as a dowry when you get married in the future." Seeing her daughter and son staring wide-eyed, and the twins staring at him with wide-eyed eyes, she picked a jade horse for Bowen, 2 smaller jade pendants for Bosi and Kijia, and Mu Yanglings. It was a short knife studded with diamonds, and the scabbard was also inlaid with 2 rows of small diamonds. but the most conspicuous thing was the dazzling ruby the size of an eyeball on the handle. Mushi smiled and said, "Don't think it's practical because it's beautiful. It's as sharp as the one left by your grandfather. It cuts iron like mud. You hold it and carry it with you. It's both decent and self-defense." Mu Yangling stared at the things Mushi brought back with wide eyes, and asked, "Father, are you going to fight or rob?" "The two are almost the same." Sitting cross-legged on the Kong, Mushi said, "Your father and I are lucky to fight with the little general in the first battle, otherwise we wouldn't be able to grab these good things. Everything else has been handed over. Hide these." Mu Yangling frowned. "Secret possession? Isn't this a violation of military discipline?" Mushi stroked her head and said with a smile, "This is a well-established rule. Both the general and the junior general know that as long as it is not too much, the army will force it back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 228. The army can't guarantee the monthly salary of the soldiers, so the only way to relax the requirements is during the war, and with these booty incentives, the soldiers will charge even harder. That's what money touching is talking about. Mushi directly ransacked the home of a nobleman in the kingdom of Jin. Of course, most of the things were handed over, and only a small part was divided among them. Chi Heiran took the big head, then him, and then the soldiers below. Because there are many children in the family and the most girls, Mushi picked out some things for girls, and the treasured sword in Mu Yangling's hand was captured by killing a lieutenant general of the Jin kingdom on the battlefield. The lieutenant general was probably a nobleman, so he would wearing this kind of gem-studded treasure knife on the waist. You don't have to hand in everything you get on the battlefield, it's all yours. Chi Heiran would not rob these from the people below, so Mushi stayed. In addition to these things, Chi Heiran also brought back a few pearl flowers and a few silver hairpins for Mu Yangling and Ziyuheng Ziulan. He said that the three girls were getting older day by day, and they had to learn how to dress themselves up. My aunt also got 2 silver bracelets, but Mushi forced them to put them on her hands, saying, "Aunt, if you weren't at home, even if Aling was capable, I wouldn't worry about my family. I didn't buy these silver bracelets. They gave it to me after they snatched it, and it's not eye-catching when you wear it on your hand." What Mushi gave to Shu Wanyang was a pair of jade bracelets, which were so crystal clear and white that Mu Yangling couldn't take his eyes off of them. Of course, Mushi took them out when the couple were alone at night, and Mu Yangling was the second. It was a genius who saw it, but my aunt didn't pay attention to it, and it was a long time later that she suddenly discovered that Shu Wanyang had this thing in her hand. Compared with the accessories, my aunt was more concerned about whether Mushi had snatched the money, so she untied Mushi's 2 burdens, and found that there were still some small accessories and pieces of cloth from Tuancheng. The aunt asked suspiciously. Said, "You didn't grab gold and silver or something? These things look good, but they can't be used as money." Mushi rubbed his nose and said, "The gold and silver will be taken back. Now I hid these gold and silver ornaments in the crevices of the stones, and then I secretly went back and brought them out to save them." Shu Wanyang asked strangely, "Jade is more expensive than gold and silver, why are they so strict only with gold and silver?" "Mother, gold and silver are money, and these jewelry can be used as long as they are melted, but other things, such as these jades and jewelry, have to be exchanged for money. These 2 points are nothing, and if there are too many, they will not be worth it. Well, it's better to leave it to the soldiers as spoils of war, and they keep the gold and silver." Mu Yangling paused and said, "The general has occupied Hanshong Mansion, he needs to rebuild the defense line, and he needs to recruit soldiers and horses, that's why no gold or silver is allowed to flow out." Mushi nodded, "That's the reason. You keep these things. If your family needs money urgently in the future, you can pawn them. You can exchange some money. But in troubled times, gold and prosperity jade, I don't know how much these things can be exchanged for now. The aunt hurriedly turned around and took out the pair of gold bracelets, saying, "Then I can't take these anymore, let your daughter-in-law put them away." Xu Huanyang pushed it back, grabbed her hand and said, "Auntie, there is a lot of money at home now. Last time the general sent so much money, we didn't touch it. I have seen this pair of gold bracelets. They are of high purity. Very, not everyone in Xingzhou Mansion can play so well, keep it as a dowry for Ziyuheng in the future, it's decent." Mu Shi asked suspiciously, "Why did the general send money to our family?" "It's the money for corn seeds. It's 320 taels. Originally, Aling wanted to pay the tax proportionally, but the general didn't want it. He said that it was a great achievement for Aling to grow this thing. She didn't want to reward it, he won't charge this tax anymore." My aunt was very happy when she mentioned this. The corn planted by Mu Yangling was the most rewarding. "Speaking of corn, I'm just about to tell you that the corn will be harvested tomorrow. I'll go and tell Grandpa Sun and let me know. Let's dry it quickly while the weather is good, otherwise the seeds will be affected." Mu Yangling looked at his father and said with a smile, "It's just right, Dad can help with the work at home. Harvesting corn doesn't require technical skills at all, as long as you have strength." The corn was ready to be harvested, and Qi Ziyuan attached great importance to it. After receiving the news, he rushed over specially, and Rongxian and the servant came with him. And Qi Heiran was already standing in the field of Mu Yangling's house with Fan Zijian. Qi Heiran was rolling up his sleeves to help break the corn in person, while Fan Zijian was helping to put the broken corn into bags to discuss business with Mu Yangling. "You are only responsible for breeding rabbits, and the contract of the workshop is still in effect. How about you? There is no need to worry about too many rabbits and not enough grass." Mu Yangling agreed without even thinking about it. This is indeed her advantage. Fan Zijian took advantage of the situation and mentioned that goods sold from the south to the north. Hanzhong is a big city, silk, tea and other things are very easy to sell, but before the border between Dazhu and Jin was sealed off, things couldn't be transported, so these things are in short supply. I have to come back after selling the diced rabbit meat, why not let him bring these things back, and we can make another fortune when we get here." Mu Yangling's eyes lit up. This kind of business is not something ordinary people can do. At least she won't be able to get Liuyan and Taiyaoan. Fan Zijian's willingness to bring her into this business shows that he really regards her as a friend. Mu Yangling took the time to pat him on the shoulder, and said, "My good brother, I will never forget you. If you are in trouble later, just come to me. I will help if I can." Mu Yangling didn't expect Qi Ziyuan. If he is so good at training people, he will quickly train Fan Zijian to be a sunny, cheerful, and generous person. Qi Heiran couldn't help laughing out loud. "Aling, Zijian needs your help right now." Mu Yangling tilted his head to look at Fan Zijian. Fan Zijian coughed lightly, and said, "Haoran and I don't share the money, so you have to pay for all the funds." Mu Yangling immediately withdrew the hand that was still on his shoulder, and said with a straight face, "Although we have friendship, we still have to talk about business. Let's talk. I will pay all the funds, so how much can I get?" Fan Zijian counted with her fingers. "Chen Guanqi is mine. He is responsible for what he buys and sells, how to sell them, and the price. Heiran's people will escort the things back. Heiran and I will get 30% and you will get 70%. Chen, how?" Mu Yangling calculated it in his mind, and felt that he would not be at a disadvantage, so he nodded and said, "Okay, that's how it is divided, but you also have a lot of shares in the workshop, how come you have no money?" "Our money is urgently needed now, and we can't get it out yet." Mu Yangling said generously, "It doesn't matter if you don't have money, tell me if you have any good ideas in the future, I support you, but the money can only come from what you earn for me, and you can't use money from my family. Fan Zijin looked around her crop field and asked, how much can you sell for these things? I remember that you planted so much wheat and rice, and after paying the military rations, it was only enough for your own food, right? Corn, that piece seems to be profitable, 320 taels. Cousin didn't ask you to deduct the share of the military rations, did he? Heiran, tell her how much you earn every month. 50 taels. Fan Zijin glared at him, and Chi Heiran said, brother gives 50 taels of monthly money, and Zijin will give me 50 taels a month. Look, the little money in your family is not enough for him to spend 2 months. Fan Zijin packed a bag, clapped his hands and said, it's only from me that I can earn so much, and I can use it to do business with us. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 229. Seeing the lively harvest scene in the field, the servant was shocked, and before he recovered, he saw Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin working in the field, and he sighed, I didn't expect the fourth son and Fan Zijin to be so close to the people. Chi Ziyuan smiled and said, my lord, you can't praise them. They are very naughty. They are not helping, they are making trouble. He took him there, and explained, that is the Mu family, the children of the Mu family and their children. It's a playmate, so I go down to play with it from time to time. Adults might as well go and have a look. I was a little surprised when I saw this corn for the first time. The servant thought that he would report to the emperor after he returned. If he could describe the growth status of the corn in detail, it would definitely make the emperor feel that he was interested in this errand, so he readily agreed. Mu Shi and Fei Bai were chopping the corn at the same root with a hoe, and then divided it into piles, while Mu Yangling and the others were sitting on the ground breaking the corn off, which was much more comfortable than breaking into the cornfield. It will not be boring, and there is no need to stand, one person occupies a pile, and you can also chat. Seeing Chi Ziyuan bring people over, everyone stood up quickly, and Mu Shi was about to come to pay respects, when he saw Chi Ziyuan waved his hand, and said to everyone, you guys are busy, Lord Angel is just watching. Chi Heiran looked up at the waiter, then lowered his head and continued to break the corn, while Fan Zijin stood up with a smile and greeted the waiter politely, and then followed behind Chi Ziyuan. The servant smiled slightly, and nodded politely to Fan Zijin. During Chi Ziyuan's absence, he received a lot of hospitality from Mr. Fan. The waiter turned his head to look carefully at the corn stalks that were still erected in the ground, and was surprised to find that there were 2 corns growing on it, so he stepped forward to peel it off and saw that the bottom one was relatively large, with compact kernels and large grains. He broke off one with his fingers, squeezed it, and the syrup flowed all over his fingers. Although the one on the top is smaller, it still has a lot of corn kernels. The waiter looked at the cornfield thoughtfully, no wonder the yield of corn is so high. Even if there is only 1 corn on a cornstalk, with such a size and density, the harvest is indeed not small, but why couldn't it be planted before? Chi Ziyuan didn't wait for him to think too much, he smiled and said, I came back late, the corn has already arrived. If 20 days ago, I would have asked the adults to taste the boiled corn, the taste is still very good. The servant clapped his hands and asked, I heard that the corn porridge doesn't taste very good. Chi Ziyuan sighed, nodded, and said, exactly, I'm afraid the grown ups might not be used to it. It's okay to eat this once in a while, but it's a bit loud when you eat it a few times. But for ordinary people, it's not bad to be able to eat enough. The corner of the servant's mouth turned up slightly. After realizing it, ordinary people would eat this food. Those who are capable might disdain to eat this food. It would have little impact on wheat and rice. The servant has a plan on how to report to the emperor, so he is not very interested in staying here. Chi Ziyuan and Rongxian looked at each other, he gave Rongxian a wink, Rongxian stepped forward with a smile and said, my lord has been walking for a long time, Why don't we go to the county town to rest? You haven't visited Mingming yet. Shui County, why don't you let the officials take you for a walk? The servant looked at Qi Ziyuan. Qi Ziyuan smiled and said, "Forgive me, my lord, I still have some military affairs to do. Why don't you let the injunction commander take you there, have a good time, and have a banquet at the Hongwei building tonight? Please do me a favor." Qi Ziyuan was serious, and the servant didn't like to stay with him, so he smiled and said, "Then General Qi is busy first, and I will take a step ahead with the Rongjun division." Seeing that they had gone far away, Fan Zijin turned to Qi Ziyuan and asked, "Cousin, I was surprised before I saw him, but now I seem to look down on the corn." Qi Ziyuan tore off the 2 pieces of corn that the servant had peeled just now, put them in his hands, and said, "Because only ordinary people can eat this stuff, and dignitaries won't eat it, but he doesn't know that 4/5 of the people in the world eat it. They are ordinary people who eat bran for at least 1 month every year. No matter how bad this food is, it is still food. It is so much better than bran. Green rice is delicious, but how many people in this world can afford it? It's just me, I only eat a few meals a year, and I still have to put down a lot of chores to take care of it for a year, and even here, I only guarantee that the 3 of us can eat for a month, which is really not worth the candle." He put 2 corns in Fan Zijin's hands, and said, "So Zijin, don't forget the priority in everything you do in the future. How can the blessing of one person override the blessing of thousands of people?" Fan Zijin lowered his eyes and asked, "Can the Holy One do it too?" Qi Ziyuan was silent for a long time, and finally asked, "If the people of the world don't recognize it, then is the emperor still the lord of the world?" He thought of the current situation of the emperor, and he was so ashamed for him. Being accused and scolded by the people every day, Qi Ziyuan felt that the emperor's mood was not right. Generally good, of course, it does not rule out that the emperor in the deep palace may not know these things outside. Seeing his younger brother and Mu Yangling poking their heads curiously, Qi Ziyuan smiled slightly, then patted Fan Zijin on the shoulder and said, "If you have nothing to do, come and play with Heiran and Mu Yangling more often, and learn more from their strengths." Fan Zijin twitched the corners of his mouth and asked, "And become stupid?" Qi Xiu glared at him, left him, and stepped forward. He looked down at the corn his brother had broken off, and said, "You can even do farm work, that's good, Aling. Next time you plant seeds at your house, call him and let him do it. He gave you a hand." Mu Yangling pursed his lips and smiled, "General, he came to help when the corn was planted for the first time, but he is so busy now, I don't have the nerve to drag him to do this anymore." "It's always good to learn more." Qi Ziyuan lifted his robe and sat beside her, and said, "You and Heiran Zijin are good friends, so you don't have to be so polite with me, just call me Big Brother Qi from now on." Mu Yangling called him kindly, "Brother Qi." Qi Ziyuan was very happy, and laughed heartily. He just liked Mu Yangling's straightforwardness, much like his younger brother Heiran, but Heiran didn't have Mu Yangling's sense of current affairs, otherwise he would be happier. When Qi Heiran heard Mu Yangling calling his elder brother Brother Qi, he hurriedly left his work and crawled over, sat opposite Mu Yangling and said, "I am also older than you, I am the 4th eldest at home, please call me Brother Qi, listen up." Mu Yangling rolled his eyes in front of Qi Ziyuan and called, "Qi Heiran." Qi Heiran stared at her. "Qi Heiran, Qi Heiran, Qi Heiran." Qi Heiran snorted, and said, "If you don't call, I will let Yanmo and Fei Bai go back, and I won't help your family anymore." Seeing that Mu Yangling was indifferent, he said again, "I have something for you, Dad will do it." "Fourth brother Qi," Mu Yangling looked at him with shining eyes, "Fourth brother Qi, my mother will cook a lot of delicious food tonight, you and brother Qi can stay and finish the meal." Only then was Qi Heiran satisfied, and said, "Although my business is urgent, it's fine to go for free, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your father." Qi Ziyuan watched them bicker, shook his head with a grin, rolled up his sleeves and got up to chop corn stalks with Mushi. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu. Chapter 230. The yield per mu of corn was quickly calculated, and it was 658 caddies, which was only 138 caddies higher than the inferior land planted by the Mu family in spring. Not only Chi Ziyuan and Chi Heiran, but also Mu Yangling didn't quite understand it. Satisfy. But the rain in the second season can't keep up, and it's only watered once, and the sun is far less than that in the first season, so it's understandable. The corn that was produced was collected by Chi Ziyuan into Xieying's storehouse, filling 2 storerooms. Of course, all these corns can't be used as seeds, they have to be screened again, and how much to bring back to Linen Mansion for the servants has to be discussed. Qin Xiang once wrote a secret letter to the servant, hoping that he could bring back all the seeds. If not, he would take most of it. Unfortunately, the letter was intercepted by Chi Heiran before it reached the servant, and then arrived at Chi Ziyuan before the case. Chi Heiran had a perfect explanation for this: I'm looking into the legacy of Zizua. The man was riding a high horse, and he was not from the post station or the court. I thought he was Zizua. Who knew he was from Prime Minister Qin? Chi Ziyuan picked up the envelope and looked at it, and saw that the envelope had been opened. The younger brother had obviously read the letter, so he asked, "Where's that person?" He tried to escape, fell off his horse and died. Chi Ziyuan looked up at him, put down the letter, and said, "Since he is not good at riding, then forget it, you go back and take care of the roads in Mingshui County, just don't let those fine workers slip through the net. As for the servants here, I'll go and explain to him." Chi Heiran was not convinced and said, "Brother, Qin Fang's management is too lenient, he wants to want all of our seeds." Chi Ziyuan snorted coldly, and said, "So his life may not be long, you go back, the seeds have been selected, and the Shen family will come to take a third of theirs in a few days, you should pay attention, don't let the servant know." "Brother, how much do you want to give to the servant?" "The remaining half," Chi Ziyuan said. "The place in the south of the Yangtze River is not small, but it is a land of fish, rice, and water, and the water conservancy is convenient. There is really no need to grow corn. Instead, it is the Sichuan-Guizhou area. How much are you willing to give them? Half of what we keep will definitely be given away, among other things. Xinyuan Mansion must not be missed, Dai Wei and Lu Ji have already sent someone to find them, I have to save some for them, and Hanshong Mansion, in addition to the share of the military households, some of it must be leaked out to the common people." Chi Ziyuan had already planned in his heart that even if there was a drought next year, he would not be able to get all the land planted corn, just to ensure the harvest. So wheat and rice have to be planted, and most of the high-end and middle-level land have to be used for these, and the rest is used to grow corn and the like. Chi Heiran calculated in his mind, and said, "Brother, I want to raise a horse." "Aren't you raising your pony now?" "No, I want to raise a large number of horses." Chi Heiran looked at him seriously and said, "Brother, the barbarian cavalry is powerful. After we attacked the city before, if the cavalry could keep up, their chief general would not have escaped. If you want to take back your homeland, you must train your cavalry." Hanshong Mansion was herded by the nobles of the kingdom of Jin before. Chi Ziyuan frowned and looked at him, "This destroys people's livelihood." "Brother, I don't want to occupy people's farmland to raise horses, but I want you to allocate a piece of land for raising horses. There are horse farms in Jingzhou Prefecture and Pingyang Prefecture. Why can't we build one in Hanshong Prefecture?" Chi Ziyuan said, "The race courses are all built by the state and managed by the imperial court. What do you say about opening a race course in Hanshong Mansion? The caravans in Fenzhou are not owned by the state. If the court wants to buy horses, it has to do business with them secretly. Brother, we have to ask for the horses raised by the court. If you ask for 10 horses, he will give you 1. Why don't we raise it ourselves? We can build a cavalry in less than 5 years. Chi Heiran said with bright eyes, Hanshong Mansion and Jingzhou Mansion are not far away. As long as we have horses, we can run back and forth, and even detour through Huazhu if we attack its east side. There is a great possibility that Jingzhou Mansion will be taken back under the attack from both sides. Qi Ziyuan couldn't help but slightly bent his hand on his lap, tapped his thigh with his fingers, and said after a while, "Are you rich?" Qi Heiran raised his head halfway, and said proudly, "As long as the eldest brother agrees, I can get money." Qi Ziyuan chuckled, thought for a while and waved his hands, "Okay, before the current magistrate of Hanshong Prefecture takes office, I will enclose a piece of land for you first." It was originally used by a rich man in the kingdom of Jin to race horses, and it is in Hanshong. At the foot of Xiangshan Mountain, 30 miles northwest of the mansion, there are about 300 mu, and Xiangshan Mountain is a grassland, but there is also danger there. There is no barrier for people from the kingdom of Jin and Xixia to enter and exit there. Whether you can keep the horse is up to you. Qi Heiran's eyes sparkled, and Qi Ziyuan said again, "I know that you and Zijin plan to use the money from business to help elder brother raise soldiers, but you should keep the money for yourself. Since you have grown up now, you must have your own private house money. Big brother has his own way here." Qi Ziyuan didn't say it before because he was relieved that the two little ones were considerate and would share his worries, but seeing that their own affairs were messed up and there were a lot of things they wanted to do, he didn't intend to tease them. As long as some things come to your mind, the little money the two of them got is not enough for the army to stuff their teeth. He has 70,000 to 80,000 soldiers, not 7 to 8,000, and he can eat them all in one day. No pants left. Qi Heiran scratched his head, smiled, and turned to look for Fan Zijin. Fan Zijin thumped his wrist on the ground. "Why didn't my cousin tell you sooner? I have already informed Chen Guanxi to come back. If he said it 2 days earlier, I will let him buy all the money and turn it into goods, so you don't have to bring silver back." Qi Heiran's eyes lit up, "Then tell him to bring it back. I'm planning to buy a pony." Fan Zijin glared at him, "Don't you already have a horse?" "I plan to build a horse farm to raise horses." Qi Heiran told him his plan, and said, "I have already asked Bailey to find someone who can raise horses for me, and when the time comes, I will take people to build fortifications and houses at the foot of Xiangshan Mountain." The horses were raised there, and it was the place where the nobles of the kingdom of Jin raced horses before, and even the pastures for planting were ready-made, and there were many houses, which saved a lot of trouble. Fan Zijin patted his head and asked, "Are you kidding me? Do you know how much a horse costs? How many horses can we afford? And don't we have to pay for fodder? We are poor now." Qi Heiran looked at him with wide eyes. Fan Zijin couldn't stand being watched by his round eyes. He sat on the chair and said, "It's okay to raise a horse, but it's not this year or next year. You have to give me time. In the next year, when I earn enough money, I will buy you hundreds of horses at once, with enough fodder. What do you think?" Qi Heiran calculated with his fingers, shook his head and said, "No, it's too long. You bought a pony and I have to raise it for 2 or 3 years before I can use it. I also have to train cavalry. How much time has this been wasted? Haste makes waste. I knew that time is life, and I want to take back my homeland in my lifetime." Fan Zijin glared at him, "Why do I feel that you are possessed by General Yuan? All you want is to regain your homeland. General Yuan is someone I admire." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 231. In the end, the two couldn't stand each other, and went back to the house angrily. Qi Heiran thinks that these few years will be a rare opportunity. They can use Hanzhong as their base to fully recover other lost land. Then the matter of cavalry can no longer be delayed. I want to buy a foal and raise it slowly. Fan Zijian, on the other hand, was worried about having no money. A small pony cost about 20 taels, and a battalion of cavalry had to have about 500 men. It is standard configuration for each person to have a horse and one horse. Half, that would cost 750 horses, or 15,000 taels at the lowest price, not counting the follow-up fodder. Fan Zijian sat in the study and counted the money he could spare, but finally felt that he was too poor. Maybe he shouldn't put all his hopes on Guanxi Chen. Mu Yangling was sitting in the yard repairing the iron plow, and his aunt instructed her to stuff a piece of flattened wood into it, and then she broke it with her hands, and felt that it should be stable, so she said, "Okay, this way it can be used now. You have to learn how to repair these things, otherwise you will have to go to the city to find someone to repair them if they break, and it will be too expensive. I've learned it now, Auntie, and I'm going to plow tomorrow." Auntie tucked her hands into her sleeves. The weather was already a bit cold. She looked up at the sky, and said, "Do you really plan to plant winter wheat?" Mu Yangling nodded. "Take advantage of the lack of work now, otherwise next spring will definitely be too busy. Take a look at this spring. After a month, which one of our family is not thin and out of shape? This kind of intensity is enough once or twice after a long time. The human body can't stand it anymore." "That's what I said, but the cultivation is too dense, and the land may be destroyed. This is what Malu is most worried about. In the past, they planted the land for half a year and let the land rest for half a year. This preserves the fertility of the land. But this year, wheat and rice were first planted in those high-quality lands, and corn was planted after harvesting, and now winter wheat is also planted. The cultivation is too dense, and the fertility of the land cannot keep up. Or even inferior places. I know what you mean. Don't worry, don't we have 4 or 5 piles of rabbit dung in our field? Later, I will go to the city to buy some night incense, and then I will dig some pond mud, mix it and dry it, and sprinkle it on the ground. Go to the field, sprinkle a thick layer, and plow it twice. I don't believe that the fertility of this land can't be guaranteed." Maliu's eyes widened in astonishment. She had never seen such a conservation of soil fertility in her life. Mu Yangling got up and shook the iron plow, said with a smile, "My father will be off tomorrow, just let him go back to work." The aunt poked her on the forehead and said with a smile, "Ghost spirit, your father took 2 days off after all. He ordered him to work as soon as he came back, so there was no time for anyone to rest. If my father is allowed to rest at home, it will be even more uncomfortable for him." Mu Yangling put his things into the utility room and closed the door, but the movement was a little louder, and the yellow mud on the wall fell down. Mu Yangling widened his eyes and looked at it for a while, then reached out to break the wall. "Don't." Before my aunt could speak, Mu Yangling had already broken off a large piece of yellow mud on the wall. Mu Yangling threw away the yellow mud guiltily, wiped his hands on his clothes, and said with a smile, "Auntie, my strength seems to have increased again." "Why is it rising, you brat? This house is already bad enough, and you're still digging things down. You're not afraid of the house collapsing?" "Then why don't we build a big house, Auntie? Our family is not short of money now," Mu Yangling said. "When my father comes back, tell him that our house will build a 2-entry blue brick and tile house. Every time we enter, we will build 5 rooms, and when the time comes, there will be 1 room for each person, and we will set up an embroidery workshop for Xiaolan and my mother, and a study room for Bowen." "That's right," my aunt pondered. "I don't know how long I can live in this house. While your father is at home, it's time to ask someone to build a house. Anyway, it's slack time, and everyone is bored at home. I'll call for it later." Your cousin and the others came to work. Mu Yangling was about to breathe a sigh of relief when his aunt said, "But even if our family is going to build a new house, you can no longer pick the mud on the wall, your strength will really collapse the house, did you hear that? I heard it, Auntie, don't worry, I will never touch this wall again. If you don't believe me, tell Ziyuheng to look at me, if I touch it, you will chop my hands off. The ant patted her hand and said, you are poor, that's enough, go and play, I will go to the back to serve my vegetable field. Seeing that her ant had left, Mu Yangling picked up a rock under her feet and crushed it. Mu Yangling looked at her hand in a daze. Why did her strength increase again? Ordinarily, it's impossible. Her strength hasn't increased since she was 9 years old. It's been a year, and she thought it was just like that. Unexpectedly, it suddenly increased again. Could it be because of her internal strength training? But she has been meditating for more than half a year, and now she doesn't even feel the slightest breath in her dantian, but her legs have changed from numb to not numb, and from fidgeting to falling asleep while doing it. Or does this strength increase with age? When is the peak? 20 to 30? Mu Yangling squeezed his fists and thought to himself, it's a pity, the army doesn't accept women. It is necessary to choose a land to build a house, and now they live naturally cannot be collapsed, so they can only choose a land nearby. No one would object. Mu Shi has 100 households now, and he is the biggest official in the village, so he quickly agreed with Xiao Qi to set aside a piece of land for him next to his current house. The Mu family built the house, Lu Ting and the others all came to help, and Mu Shi spent more money to hire 9 people, and it was almost done. He discussed with Lu Ting and the others how to build the house, and even if he was not at home, Lu Ting was there to supervise the work. With the Lu family here, they are not afraid that other workers will think that the Mu family is lazy or play tricks because they are not in their prime. The Mu family's wages for the 9 workers are 20 wen per day, which is neither high nor low, and belongs to the upper middle level. When Mu Yangling checked the account books, he found that Lu Ting and the others were all helping for free and had no money to pay. Mu Yangling was taken aback for a moment, and then asked, Auntie, cousin, why don't they get paid? The aunt said without raising her head, they are from my own family, what wages do they want? Don't be silly. You go to the city tomorrow to buy 2 caddies of pork belly. If you don't have any, buy some fat ones instead of skinny ones. When people come to work for our family, we have to let them eat well so that they will have strength. Aling went to buy pork. Except for pork belly, all the meat he bought was leaner than fat. Their family was used to eating meat and thought it was okay. If someone else ate it, it would inevitably feel that the oil was not enough. Mu Yangling also knew that it is better to be fat than thin in this age, so he nodded in response. After hesitating for a while, he said, I won't pay my cousin and them. I think it's very hard for them to come to work for our family. Now the aunt raised her head, she looked at Mu Yangling and said, you kid, don't do anything stupid, if you dare to ask your cousin about wages, see if he ignores you in the future, they will come to help its love, what did you pay them for? I've never heard of asking money for helping relatives build a house. Have you ever collected money for helping your uncle and the others work? Mu Yangling shook his head. In the past, did your father and your cousin dare to raise money with me when they repaired my house? Mu Yangling shook his head. That's the end of it. Don't worry about the house. You should plow the land tomorrow. Didn't you say that you want to plant 30 acres of winter wheat? That land has to be plowed before it can be fertilized. I can't plow alone. That's right, my aunt frowned, I'll go with you tomorrow, and it shouldn't be a problem to have your cousins at home. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 232. Lu Ting looked at the iron plow, then at his aunt, and finally said, Aunt, you'd better not go back and call my daughter-in-law, and let her help. It's time to plow the ground, call him too, and let the mother and son take turns helping Aling to help the plow, and you should stay at home and keep an eye on the door. Uncle, Doesn't your family grow winter wheat? Mu Yangling asked. Lu Ting sighed and said, we really want to grow corn, but there is a word from above that the weather may be bad next year, so we ask everyone to set aside the land to plant that corn. Lu Yuan said worriedly on the side, but we don't know how to grow the corn. Although they said they would send people down to teach us, but they have no confidence in the things that have never been planted, and I also heard that the things don't seem to be good. How delicious, so I still want to grow some wheat. I think the weather might be really bad next year, Mu Yangling said. At this time in the past, there would be 1 or 2 rains in a month or so, but how long has it been? Except for the last 2 rains, until now I didn't see the shadow of the dark cloud anymore, Mu Yangling said. The river is now only left with the layer of silt at the bottom of the river, and the other places are all dry and cracked. I want to plant some winter wheat if there is drought in spring. The winter wheat has been planted anyway with the winter snow as a base. It will definitely grow no matter how dry the spring is. It should have a spring rain. With that rain, the wheat can head and fill. Even if the harvest is worse, it is better than spring wheat. Powerful. Lu Ting squatted on the ground, thought for a while, and said, but what about the heat preservation? Our Xingzhou mansion is very cold in winter, and the ground is as hard as a brick. If you fall down, your head will be broken. Can the wheat rise in spring? Mu Yangling smiled and said, it's cold in winter, don't underestimate the crops, even stones can be broken, but what you said is also reasonable. I plan to pull all the wheat and straw in the house after planting, cover the ground to keep the ground warm. In winter, there is also a buffer when the snow comes. The most important thing is to save water to the maximum. After the spring, the sun does not directly shine on the ground, and the volatilized water can be reduced a lot. Don't forget, we also have water conservancy here, 3 canals and 3 large reservoirs. Lu Yuandao, the reservoir and canal belong to your 5th battalion. The little general was kind last time. It will really be drought next year. I'm afraid your 5th battalion won't open the reservoir again. Isn't there still another winter? You can also build water conservancy, Mu Yangling said. I heard the little general vaguely say that he wanted to widen the mouth of Jialing water to our river. The general in charge also said, wouldn't it be enough to build a large canal from the river and build a reservoir? Lu Ting and Lu Yuan smiled wryly. Do you think everyone is like the little general? Not to mention that we never see the general. Even if we did, he wouldn't waste manpower on building water conservancy projects. Your Biaoxian and the others, now they are not in Xingzhou mansion at all. They were all transferred to Hanshong mansion. Now they are guarding the city there. Even if they take 10 days off, they will not be able to return home. We haven't seen them for more than 3 months. If they hadn't sent someone to report back said to be alive. Lu Ting was full of worry. Unless we build the water conservancy ourselves, we have no tools, and we can't make decisions about this matter, and we can't organize it. Lu Ting and Lu Yuan were very sorry. They were not under the command of the little general at the beginning. Although Qi Heiran was young, he listened to people's persuasion and paid attention to farming. Unlike other generals, he mainly focused on training soldiers. For farming, they only look at the results, not the process. Obviously there is no favorable condition, and the goal is still set so high. Lu Ting feels that he is 10 years old after only 1 year. Now Mu Yangling can't do anything. He can't ask the little general to come forward. It's an act of crossing the line, which is very annoying. Mu Yangling could only suggest, how about Uncle Ting, try and see if you can organize people to dig a canal and reservoir. We have a lot of Lu family members. As long as we can convince the clan, we can convince other people. Not necessarily if you want to build a camp, you can combine people from 2 or 3 nearby villages. Your land is together, and the canals and reservoirs you build can be used by everyone. Works. Lu Yuan looked at the big brother with bright eyes. Lu Ting's scalp was numb and he said, I've never done this before. It's the first time for a big girl to get on a bridal sedan chair. Are you missing arms and legs, or are you missing a head compared to others? Can't you figure it out for yourself? The ant said, don't slap me, you haven't done this before. They have never done anything. As long as you show your momentum, they will listen to you. Mu Yangling nodded again and again, and said, cousin, give it a try. If it doesn't work, it's nothing to do with you. In the end, just lift your hands away. Anyway, we worked hard, didn't we? Lu Yuan nodded again and again. Brother, if you suggest, I will be the first to respond. Lu Ting rolled his eyes at him. My brother, how dare you not respond? Lu Yuan scratched his head and smiled. Lu Ting sat cross-legged on the ground, took a stick and drew calculations on the ground, frowned and said, manpower alone is not enough. There are several families in our village who can't produce strong men. The family is either an old mother or a few half-grown children. We can't take them away too. Isn't that a waste of people? Mu Yangling stopped going to the field now, and sat down to give him advice. Then you can ask them to pay for the goods. If you want to build water conservancy, you have to buy some tools. If you can't get them, see if you can get them pay for goods, so that in the future they will not have any complaints about water conservancy, and if they can't afford it, you can arrange lighter jobs for them. Mu Yangling listed out all the work needed for the construction of water conservancy projects. Digging canals and reservoirs must be done by grown men, but digging mud and foundation stones is something even half-grown children and young women can do. If the construction starts now, it should be ready before the spring. He said again, cousin, you still have to find someone who understands water conservancy to choose a good place for you. This water conservancy does not mean that you can find a piece of land to build it. You can get twice the result with half the effort if you choose a place. Lu Ting lost confidence even more. Where can I find such a capable person? Lu Ting really couldn't get in touch with such a person. Mu Yangling thought for a while and said, how about I ask the little general for you to see if he can find it for you? Lu Ting breathed a sigh of relief. Then if we don't succeed in cultivating in the end, isn't it for nothing that the little general owes favors to others? It's okay, cousin, you can do it at ease. The little general will agree with others. Things in this world can't be done all at once, and people won't blame them. Lu Ting pondered, you and uncle are capable, and you are of the older generation, maybe it would be better for him to come forward. No, Mu Yangling and his aunt objected together. The aunt glanced at Mu Yangling, and said, he is old and a little confused. It is up to you younger generations to decide this matter. Don't bother him with everything. Lu Ting, Lu Yuan, and Mu Yangling were both a little embarrassed. Mu Yangling smiled dryly and then said seriously, Uncle Ting, and uncle only have prestige in the clan, and your village and the nearby villages may not listen to him. Yes, there are old people in other people's homes, and once they talk about it, they don't have to do anything. I think this matter really needs your younger generation to come, it will be more appealing, and the old people will not object too much. Mu Yangling coughed lightly, and said in Lu Daqian's tone, you are all grown up, you have to fight and beat, and you have to rely on you for these things in the future? While we are still alive, what do you want to do if we can calculate for you? Just do it.